Hello, this is me, Tech Postala, and I am doing another video. This one is another Omen. So let me begin. Second chapter, in which is related to the evil omen, which they regarded in two ways. So it was when they heard that the white-hooded hawk cried out, and what the merchants did when somewhere on the road such befell them. Perhaps it cried out at them. Likewise, they considered it an omen of evil when the white-hooded hawk screeched at someone, as they said it spoke in two ways. And that part could be translated into, in two ways came what it is said. Something good and something bad. When it displayed good, then they heard its words, which is said as it screamed. A good time. When this was the case, none were frightened. The travelers were in no way terrified by it. Rather, they rejoiced. It was as if their heart were gladdened, because perhaps they would come upon something pleasing, perchance in something they would be favored. They would attend something beneficial. But when they heard that it laughed too long in a high pitch, as if it bosom and its side thighed, and as if it screamed hollowed with joy, then as if they were sick and frozen, none spoke aloud. They went with head hangings, with necks loose. No longer were they control. Because of this, they felt that perhaps something woeful would now betide them. They would come upon something perilous. Either some one of them would die, or a sickness would come, or somewhere they would be cut off. They befell them when perhaps they were somewhere among the mountains in a gorge in the midst of the desert. Qualnepantla. So that could be either translated as either woods or desert. So it's kind of those weird things as it's translated. In the middle of the woods, in the thickest within among the trees. And if it were merchants, vanguard merchants, wayfarers, whom it befell them at them, the white-hooded hawk laughed. They said that perhaps now they would come upon something, or their goods would be carried away by the water, or some evil men, thieves, who had escaped from their hands, and who pilfered, plundered, and robbed, would now wrest goods from their hands and plunder, strip, sack, and rob them. Or some of them would now faint and collapse, throw themselves to the ground, or they would be eaten by wild animals, the fair brutes. They would become the game of wild beasts, or somewhere they would be encircled by encountered war. When this was so, he who was leader, who went commission leader, who proceed as principal there among the road, then began to encourage them. He greeted his younger brethren with tears, his charge who was being taught. Along the way, he instructed them and said to them, "Be of good cheer, O my sons, O my younger brothers. Of what profit is it that we were afflicted? Let no one be sad or heavy of heart. In truth, for this we came. We came to die, went to our heart heavy and foreboding. Thus we went from the left our homes and the homes of others." This Pai, Tonka, and Teka are to read Tokal and Tekal. And then it talks about Spanish tricks. Our aunts, our uncles, and nephews, our elder sisters. For this reason they shed tears for us. They poured out upon their weeping, their sorrow, that perhaps here somewhere on the desert, on the plains, in the gorge, in the forest, in various places will lie scattered our bones and our hair. In many places our blood, our redness will spread, poured out and slippery. For in truth this hath been our reward. Let no one feel womanish in heart. Is that what this says in the now text? Yield completely to death. Pray to our Lord. Let none think of or brood over our condition, for only later shall we know of whatever things we may strike against. Then in the end they may weep for ourselves. For truly this is how we come giving honor. The word tiquitenyotico for honor. And luster to our lords, the merchants who lead, raising them in glory and lifting high their heads. Eerie now they have gone knowing and marveling at such things. We are not then the first to discover, and behold what will befall us. Strengthen your heart, O my sons. And if somewhere night fell, and they gathered, joined, crowded, and assembled themselves, somewhere at the foot of the tree or the opening of a gorge, and bound and tied, fastened together, and placed on the ground all their staves, which represented their god, Yakatekutli, here before him, and they did penance, bled themselves, cut their ears, and drew straws through them, so they only yield to whatsoever might befall them. But no one worried or speculated whether it might befall them, as a white-hooded hawk had foreboded to them, and perhaps they quite escaped. Perchance nothing happened to them who were then terrified when the time of their fright has occurred. If nothing befell them, their hearts were therefore again a little lifted. They raised their heads and revived their spirits, for their fate was so established that fear should no longer be with them. But the fearful ones, the younger brothers who were not of firm fortune, not to rugged day signs, when they learned of the omen, went fearing it. No longer were they happy. They talked no more. No longer did they speak aloud. Nowhere were their hearts content. Things only worsened as they traveled. They only went engraving on their minds whatever they imagined. No longer with calm, but the vainly did they little way follow the land. Rather they thought that perchance soon they would somewhere come upon what in truth meant their omen, which they have heard and by which they had been frightened. It hath already been said, nevertheless, that no one knew whether indeed it would be verified or would not be so. So its words were understood, since it spoke in two ways, to be good and bad. So the white hawk screeching could be either be seen as a good or a bad sign, just depending what happens, which kind of like everything else does. Anyway, I guess I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.